Here we are, guys. We're back for another, and this is a very special one. We're back for another episode of the After Hours podcast. And today I have the pleasure of being joined by a gentleman who we met a few years ago. To make a long story short, I ended up helping you with the purchase of your home in a community that, I'm now close to in Huntington. And Joe, it's a real pleasure to have you on here today. So I appreciate you taking the time, and let's dive right into it. You could introduce yourself, and let's get into
Yeah, it's
things.
good to be here, Dean. Today's actually the anniversary of the day we closed on my
Is
house.
it really?
Yeah.
What are the chances?
Nah, the universe works that way.
It does.
And it's good to be here, man. I'm proud of you. Congrats on the new location. It's beautiful.
I appreciate
You're
that.
doing big things, and it's great. It's awesome, and I wish you all the best of luck, and I hope you make more money than anybody else around here.
That's it. No, I appreciate that. To have people like you, in my life as a client and now a friend, I'm grateful for that, and for us to be here. So, why don't we, talk about, I know when we did your purchase, you having an attorney background, talk a little bit about yourself, and, let's get right into it. So you're an attorney, and I know you represent some special people, in the world, and I want you to, give a little insight, on kind of what you have going on.
Indeed.
And then we'll get into things.
My practice right now is primarily focused on the intersection of defamation, free speech, criminal law, and cancellation. So if you think about a four-part intersection with those four parts being there and somebody standing in the middle of that intersection, they're going to find themselves in a predicament. And you have two types of people who respond to defamatory comments about them, or the threat of being canceled, or the threat of even being put in jail for saying the wrong thing. Yep. You have fighters, and you have people who kind of just want to fold up or just make it go away quietly. I think the reality of the situation is that most of these things don't go away quietly in the world that we live in today. Right. The wrong type of if anybody has the camera running for the worst 15 minutes of their life, and that's tweeted or that's put on TikTok or YouTube, that follows you forever. So what do you do in that situation when your words and your actions make you friends and make you enemies? Who defends you? How do you figure that stuff out? That's what I do. That's sort of my meat and potatoes of my practice right now. I do a bunch of other things as well, lots of civil litigation, lots of heavy criminal defense work. I absolutely love what I do. I represent all different types of people, primarily men of wealth and influence. Right now, the most famous, notorious, and awesome of all those clients would be Andrew and Tristan Tate. Those are two guys who I've been representing since 2023. We've done a lot of great work in their cases, domestically and abroad. Very proud to represent them, to call them clients, brothers, and friends. Prior to that, I sort of went from being a regional guy to national and international through January 6th related litigation. I defended a lot of the guys who went to the Capitol, like it or hate it. That's a conversation for another day. Those men were being denied their constitutional rights. They were unfairly jailed for long periods of time. Most lawyers in the world didn't want to take those cases, never mind go on the news and talk about it. I was the only attorney out there for a few years, raising awareness about what was happening to those guys. I helped author the pardon conversation that President Trump eventually pardoned all these guys. And I did all the big talk shows, all the big podcasts, Tucker Carlson, all the big ones during that time. And I went from being a regional guy to national and international. And, here I am today. Offices here, offices in Dubai. We're doing pretty good. And it's a great day to be alive.
That's amazing. How do you mentally deal with the pressure, and I'm sure the scrutiny of representing certain people that's controversial?
Right.
How do you deal with stuff like that?
Well, listen, everything that I do is grounded in my faith. I'm a practicing Catholic. That's a big part of my life.
Amazing.
And thanks. And, it's a good deal being a Catholic. We get to wash away our sins and go to heaven at the end if we follow the rules and live a life of faith and consciousness and all those good things. So one of the things that Jesus said was, if you belong to the world will love you as its own. But because you did not belong to the world, you belong to me, the world will hate you. Always remember that the world hated me first, and have no fear because I've overcome the world. That is my ethos. That is what I live by in terms of my life, in terms of my practice. And Jesus said a lot of controversial things, and they crucified him. right? Malcolm X said controversial things and they shot him. Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, right? Lots of times when good men, men of influence, men of strength, men of articulation and power, when they voiced the opinion of truth to the world will try to cancel them, the world will try to shut them down, put them in jail, or even take their life, right? I believe that I'm on the side of righteousness. I believe that free speech is damn near absolute, and that the answer to free speech, the answer to controversial speech is more speech. It's never cancellation, it's never jail, it's never a bullet. It's okay, you know what, you said something that offends me, you said something that I don't like, and I'm going to challenge you in the free marketplace of ideas with another opinion. So because I stick up for these guys, right, I don't endorse everything that they say. Sometimes I endorse a lot of it, but it's not necessarily about what they're saying. It's their right to say it freely without consequence, freely without cancellation, freely without being debanked, deplatformed, or put in jail, so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, I believe that I am on the side of righteousness, and that sits well with me. So I feel pure inside of me. My family supports me. My clients love what I do. I feel like my purpose is aligned with my mission that God has created me to carry out in this life. So I have no fear, because fear is the opposite of faith. And the moment you start to entertain fear, everything falls apart. So it's just faith and it's purpose forward all of the time. I'm not in the business to make friends. I'm in the business to do the right thing. And if I make some friends along the way, well, then God bless America. And all the enemies that I made along the way, well, what else is new? I was making enemies since they came out of the womb. It's just who I am. I'm used to it. And it's proof that I'm doing something right.
Yeah, I love that, proof you're doing something right, because I feel like with anything in life, and I always talk about this, whether you're successful in an avenue of life or in your business or whatever it is, and somebody was actually talking about this an hour ago, sometimes it's the people that you grew up with or the people that should be your support system that sometimes not necessarily try to bring you down, but they're not there to commend your growth and what you've accomplished in life. And I always have been one to want to support and be like and do the things that I see people excelling in. Maybe they're excelling more in an avenue of life that I am. I love that stuff, and I feel like society now, especially, in 2025, it's so sad that people can't voice their opinion without dealing with consequences that they probably shouldn't have to deal with. Speaking about your faith and stuff, like what initially drew you to law, and then getting to the point of, representing some of these high-profile people? When did that all start? Did you meet the right person, or did you always kind of know that you wanted to be involved in this?
No, so in 2005, making a long story very short, I have two brothers. My adopted brother was accused of a crime that he absolutely did not commit. He was threatened with 125 years of incarceration. He wound up being forced into taking a plea. He's a paranoid schizophrenic, didn't have meaningful counsel. They held him for 3 days without food, without water. They forced a confession from him illegally. And before I knew what was going on, my brother was off to jail. He was literally getting dragged away in a black and white pinstripe suit. And I was like, what is this, the 1800s? What world do we live in? How does this even happen? I watched my mom and dad in the courtroom and then later at home that night, just absolutely shattered. Good people, my mom and dad, blue-collar people. We had about 20 foster kids come through our house growing up. We adopted my brother. And to watch them go through this and to watch what happened to my brother, I couldn't just simply go back to the life that I was living and do nothing. So I sat in my brother's room, I looked around, I said, when he gets out, everything's going to be different. The technology is going to be different, the TV is going to be different, he's going to miss out on all this time. And I wrote him a letter that night. And I said, Tony, Anthony, your sentence is 15 years of incarceration. I'm going to go to school to become a lawyer to get you out. I can become a lawyer in 7 years, and hopefully I'll be able to reach you before your sentence is maxed out. That's where it started for me. That was the genesis of it all. Now, it took me 10 years to become an attorney. Right? I had to apply to school, I had to move, I had to do this, I had to get admitted to the bar. And by the time I had gotten out, my brother was getting out of prison that same week. He did about 10 years. So unfortunately, I was not able to help my brother. But the fire in my belly that burned for justice and the fire in my belly that burned against the over-prosecution of innocent people carried with me all along. So I started my career as an intern at the Innocence Project in New York City. That's where, guys will do 10, 20, 30 years in jail, and they later get exonerated for DNA evidence. And then I became a public defender because I wanted to help people of all stripes, of all races, of all creeds, and of all types of financial situations. I represented hundreds of people over the course of 5 years. And then I decided to go out on my own. But I knew that being a public defender was going to give me a lot of experience with people, a lot of experience with trials. So I made my bones doing that. And then in 2019, on September 13th of 2019, I launched the McBride Law Firm in New York City.
Amazing.
And, look, I'm a neighborhood guy. I grew up Brooklyn, Long Island. Lots of guys were like, are you going to go to the Fed yet? I got work for you, all this stuff. And I had my first Fed case within a month. And I just kept going ever since then. People, when they look at doctors and lawyers, right, they want to see, you want a doctor with good bedside manners, who cares about you, doesn't treat you like a statistic, who's not going to just jam all these types of work, drugs and stuff down your throat. And with a lawyer, lots of people want a lawyer who's going to fight for them, right? So lots of people say that I'm a pit bull attorney. I embrace that. I'm a fighter, I'm smart, and I get a lot of work done. So that's sort of how it started. That's how I've gotten to where I'm at. I was never afraid as a public defender or as a private attorney to take on controversial cases. And when you take on controversy, the light gets shined on you, and what you do at that moment, how you shine as the man in the arena, often determines the next year or so of your life in terms of your legal practice. I've been fortunate enough and blessed enough and courageous enough to get some results along the way, to make some friends along the way, to make a reputation for myself, and that's how it started. But before that, I was just a sort of like a street guy, a hustler who worked jobs that I didn't love, and I really didn't have a purpose. And God gave me the purpose through the suffering of my brother, through the suffering of my family. Out of something evil, something great and something good was able to come out of it.
That's truly amazing. And what kind of, to touch on that, what you just said, and when did it get to the point of you being introduced to some of these high-profile people that you now represent? Like, how did those connections come about? Was it a case that led to something, or?
Sure. So as a regional guy, mainly doing federal criminal defense and state criminal defense work, I had a reputation for if you came to me, and a lot of this was organized crime and all that stuff. That's what you do as a criminal defense attorney. My reputation was I didn't represent anybody who cooperated. So if somebody cooperated, if somebody proffered, if somebody went in and wanted to cut a deal and that was going to require them ratting on other people, I wouldn't represent you. Right? I made that based on years of experience growing up and where I grew up and knowing that it would help my brand. So I was offered a lot of big money cases early on that I simply did not take because those guys were going to cooperate. As the word got around that, hey, if Joe was representing you, that meant that you weren't cooperating, other types of people would come to me, whether it was white collar, whether it was organized crime, whatever it was. So I made my name regionally doing it that way, and I got good results, and I got respect for it like anything else. And then again, after January 6th, my practice was basically moved to Washington for a couple of years. I had an apartment there, I lived there, breathed there, did my work there, and all those cases had a lot of national attention and eventually international attention. And once I started going on TV and doing all the big rounds and all the talk shows, having arguments on CNN or more friendly conversations on Fox News and Newsmax, people were like, wow, who is this guy? This guy really speaks his mind. He says things like it is, so on and so forth. And that's how I began to make a bigger reputation for myself. And as that happened, other people came in, and the sort of the level of clientele that I represented changed, and that sort of led to where I am today.
That's awesome. And I know you kind of answered this question already because you said the reason you do this is to represent people that truly believe what they did is, there is nothing wrong with it. There is free speech. There are certain things that should be okay, whether they are or not in this world. And my question is have you ever thought about how your reputation could be affected by representing some of these people that have such a vocal mind or a vocal voice? Has that I'm sure it's something that's crossed your mind, but you seem like somebody that, doesn't care about the nonsense, on the outside. You're more focused on, what is my role? How do I help you? You hired me to do something, and that's what I'm going to do.
Sure. Sure. So when you look
Deal with that stuff.
When you look at the warrior mindset, right, whether it's David Goggins or Andrew Tate or any of these guys that are out there on the internet really, really giving the message about how to move forward and how to take charge and how to go forward in life, there's a common expression. It's called burning the ships,
Yep.
right? And what does that mean? That has to do with one army is invading another land, and the only way to go through is forward. Right, so the general burns the ships. There's no retreating. It's go forward and have victory or die. Right. So when I took my first January 6th case, that was the case of Richard Big O Barnett. He was the guy who had his feet up on Nancy Pelosi's desk. Right. That was, Jay-Z rapped about it. It was all over the world. It was all over the news. I knew that if I was going to take that case, that I was going to lose a lot of my relationships in New York, especially because of the politics here, and in other places as well. But I prayed about it. I spoke to my family about it, and I said, okay, we're going to burn the ships, right? We know that there's no going back after this point, but I believe that this mission is important, and that the universe, that God, that the business world will reward me on the other end of this if I do this honorably and if I fight with all my heart, with all my soul, with all my strength. So that was the crucial moment of, reputation, what was going to happen, and did my own personal reputation or the enemies that I was going to make, did it matter more to me, or was the mission and was the future and was stepping into the power, becoming the man and the attorney that I wanted to be, that I knew that I was called to be, was that more important? So of course, I chose that. I moved forward. I lost friends. I lost relationships. I lost money,
Sure.
all those things. But in the end, I made it all back and then some, right? And on my own terms. And a few years before that, when I was working at the Legal Aid Society in Manhattan, it's a very left-leaning communist organization. They do a lot of good work. They help a lot of people. But when it comes to politics, if you were a Trump supporter there, you were absolutely ostracized. So when it became public knowledge in 2016 that I voted for Trump and that I supported Trump openly, the whole organization turned against me. They tried to decertify me. They didn't want to let me move on to graduate, to doing murders and all these other things. All of my natural progression within the organization was slowed, and there was an organized movement to get me out. I went to battle with those people there on my own terms. I had an internal trial based on my performance and other things that I absolutely wiped the floor with them with. I destroyed all of them. And then the leader of the Manhattan Criminal Defense Practice at the time, he said to me and to everybody else in the room, well, if there was any question as to whether Mr. McBride is able to, do his job effectively, I think he just demonstrated that to all of you. And I won. And they gave me the best office with one of the most senior attorneys in the whole building. I stayed there for about a month, and I said, I got nothing left to do here. I've beaten these people. They can't teach me anymore. I'm not at home here anyway, so I'm going to leave. I'm going to start my firm on my own terms. So once that happened, that was the first example of my career burning the ships. January 6th, another example of burning the ships. Andrew Tate, another example of burning the ships. You just sell out. You sell out and you commit yourself to your future vision. You go with your gut, and if your gut says to do this, and if your family supports you, and if you feel inside that God is really telling you that this is what you're supposed to do, you do it. Sure, it's David versus Goliath all the time, and sometimes you don't win them all, but in the end, you get to take down giants, and that's a beautiful and that's a powerful thing. And I'm blessed and I'm lucky that I'm able to do it.
And you're blessed, to be able to even think that way, because a lot of people don't. A lot of people get so caught up in what's this person's opinion and what's some of the world leaning towards, and to be comfortable within what you believe in. That's just amazing. I commend that, for anybody. So to talk a little bit about, the Tates, how did you meet them? How'd you meet Andrew or Tristan? I know you represent both of them.
Sure.
Because obviously they're two of the biggest public figures, in the world right now and for the last couple of years, with their legal battles and, with everything going on. And I'm not too educated on what's happened and what they've gone through, but I see it all over the place, through you and through
Right.
the world. So how did you meet, how did that start, that
So,
relationship?
so like anybody else during the lockdowns during the pandemic, right? I was in Brooklyn, locked up in my house there, and it's beautiful brownstone. So I wasn't locked up in an apartment, thank God, but other people were. One of my son was just born at that time. I'm holding him, and I'm on the internet. There's nowhere to go, and I see Andrew just like all over the world. Like, yeah, lockdowns. I'm not going to do that. I'm in Dubai. I'm here. I'm there. Like, this is all a scam, and I'm just looking, going, man, he's right. He's right. This is all. This is just garbage. Like, what are we doing here? And so I became a bit of a Tate guy at that point in time. I said, I like what this guy is saying. And then you had all the cancel culture stuff that was going on. You can't say a boy is a boy, a girl is a girl, bathrooms, all this stuff. I said, you know what? I agree with him there. I like what he's saying as well. So I learned about him a few years before I was introduced to him. And then at the tail end of the January 6th stuff, when I was really all over the place, sort of at the peak of it, I got a call saying, hey, these guys like your fight. Are you interested in talking to them? And I said, yeah, of course, man. I like their fight too. Let's have a conversation. So we had a talk, and we agreed to terms very quickly. And I was on a plane to go see them within a few weeks. Within about a month.
What, in Romania?
Yeah, in Romania.
Got it.
So, they were in a very bad situation, and they needed somebody who was going to stand up and who was going to be willing to do whatever it took to get the truth out about the situation. They were in jail. The whole world thought that they were human traffickers and all this bad stuff.
I said, we were hearing all these things, I feel like, in America, while they were over there, and no one really understood, I feel like, what was going on. I'm sure you know better than anybody.
That is exactly right. So this is what happened. During the January 6th litigation, there was a one-sided narrative for a very long time. People were saying insurrection, insurrection, insurrection. All these guys went down, they did all these bad things. Based on a review of the evidence, I knew that that wasn't true. So I worked very hard to get the January 6th tapes released. They were not broadcasting the actual footage of what took place in long form to the public. The media, the leftist media, was getting pieces of little snippets here and there to proffer a narrative to the public that something else happened than what exactly did happen. So the narrative was saying that people went down to the Capitol, kicked in the doors, did all these things, hurt all these cops. That wasn't true. Lots of people went down to the Capitol. They had an interaction with the cops. The cops attacked them first. They defended themselves. I was able to get the tapes proffered to the public for the first time. I got the first 3-hour block of video footage given to the American public and for the world to see. And that changed everything. It changed everything. We were also able to demonstrate that January 6th was largely an op. There were operatives on the ground. There was a whole bunch of things going on that should have never been happening. And we were able to get that to the public. So I changed the narrative on January 6th for the public. So I knew that I had what it took to change the narrative for Andrew and Tristan Tate. And after taking a deep dive into their evidence, I knew that they are innocent of everything that they were accused of. So the Romanian justice system was holding them and not giving the information to the public. So what did we do? We took that information and we packaged it into a defamation suit in Florida, and we sued the woman who wrongfully accused them in Romania, in Florida, for defamation, because a lot of the defamatory comments happened in Florida, or they were directed into Florida. So what am I saying? We were able to change the narrative. We were able to change the game from day one. And once that first sort of thread unraveled, we were unable to unravel everything else, step by step by step by step, to prove to the world and to governments, to the media, and to the public, and to courts that these guys were actually falsely accused. They're not human traffickers, so on and so forth. And the truth of that, the veracity of that, is demonstrated by the fact that these guys are out, that they're traveling the world, that our defamation case in Florida has survived dismissal. It's moving forward, which means that there is evidence to demonstrate to the court and to the public that they were falsely accused, that they were defamed, so on and so forth. So what does that mean? That cuts against the narrative of what happened in Romania. So an American court, an American judge took a look at the same facts and said, actually these guys, something wrong happened here, and we're going to litigate that here. So look, I'm litigating 5 or 6 cases for them, different states, different places all throughout the world. It's a big, massive undertaking that basically my entire office is devoted to at this time. But we've been able to do some real fantastic work. Number one, because they got the budget. Number two, because they got the guts. Number three, because they're innocent. And number four, because they let me fight for them. So that's how we got to where we're at today.
That's some story, and it's always, the media, they always, whether it's good or bad, I feel like there's always something portrayed from some outlet that's not what really goes on. So, how do you think, a lot of us heard things about that, like you said, the human trafficking thing, but obviously you know more about the case than anybody, so, how do you think the mainstream media has twisted things or maybe distorted how they portray like them as people or their case? Like, do you think it's more of a political thing or is it really a legal thing? What is your opinion on that?
So before they were jailed in Romania, the United Kingdom spent about.
You're representing them in Romania, or it's
So we have a global team.
You do.
Right? And we interact, all the attorneys work together. Right? So we interact with the attorneys in the United Kingdom. I work very closely with the Romanian team as well. We have a team in Dubai, we have a team here. So I am the head of the American team, but I am fully 100% integrated to everything else that they're doing abroad. So we all work together as one cohesive unit. We're all attorneys. We're all on the same team. We enjoy attorney-client privilege, so on and so forth. So that's how that works. What was the first part of your question?
like no one really knows their real story. I feel like the last couple of years they became so popular because of the human trafficking case and all these things. But I'm sure really what's going on.
Yeah. So the United Kingdom spent $2 billion in an effort to cancel them, right? Through schools, through media. When that failed, right, there was an op to get them incarcerated in Romania. So they were wrongfully accused in Romania, and because the Romanian justice system doesn't look anything like our justice system, they were held in prison for a long period of time, illegally, and we were able to sort of break that case open by getting the facts in front of an American court and getting the facts into the public. Once we were able to actually show, look, we're not hiding anything here. This is what the truth is. Everything they said is a lie. Look, give me the time, give me the ability to look at the evidence with a reasonable mind and put your bias aside. Look at the facts and look at the law and let me know if you think that they're guilty. Anybody who's fair-minded and reasonable, who's taken a look at this stuff, says they're 100% innocent, right? But then you have their enemies in the government and in the media who are never going to admit that they're wrong, who are going to continue to try to cancel them, to try to debank them, to try to hurt them, not because of their conduct, but because of their words and the influence that they have over young men across the world. That's what this is about.
And have you seen like a similar case ever, like where the system, I feel like, is trying to make an example like they did out of people like this? Like, have you been involved in a similar situation?
This is a case of first impression. Nothing like this has ever happened in the world. I cannot think of another case in the world where multiple governments have gone after two men for their words and not their conduct. That is sort of the culture and era that we were living under during the Joe Biden administration, right? For 5 years, they were reshaping and redefining what it meant to be a man, what it meant to be a woman, who could be in a bathroom, who could talk to your kids at school about what all these things. And Andrew and Tristan said, hey, wait a second, this is wrong. The world's been doing things one way for 5,000 years. You can't now change everything because you feel like it, right? They stood against that, and the people who think like Biden or the people who think like that group of people all around the world went after them. They went after them, whether it was the banks, whether it was government, whether it was whoever. YouTube deplatformed them, Google, whoever it is, Facebook. Everybody went after them and tried to really reduce these guys to nothing. But because these guys are warriors, because these guys come from nothing, because these guys understand what it is to be a fighter and what it is to be on the right side of truth, and they would rather live free they would rather die than not live free. They were able and they were willing to fight. So it is the confluence of those events, right? You have an organized plot to destroy them around the world. You have a meaningful defense to go on the attack for them and to expose the situation for what it is. And then when you're speaking the truth enough and you're saying, hey, look, this is our story. It's never going to change. It's been this way since day one, right? People, after a while, tend to go, I guess they were telling the truth, and hearts and minds begin to change.
Yeah. And before we jump into some different stuff, why do you really think, people like Andrew and Tristan Tate, like, why do you think they have such a big influence on, young men, throughout the country and really anywhere? Because I feel like from what I've seen, he has a big group of people that support him.
Billions.
Yeah, billions.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's, the young male community, or any age male,
Of course.
in that community.
Well,
why do you think that is?
Well, because we live in a world that tries to disenfranchise males, number one. Says that masculinity is somehow toxic, that it's, the testosterone that you're born with is somehow a problem. The idea of being a man who can move forward and become successful based on his own terms in this world, then you should follow me because I'm one of the few examples who would ever actually teach you how to do it the right way. And the world either hates them or loves them for that. But men, young men in general, think it's a pretty awesome thing to watch two guys who come from nothing become so successful. And that's the real bottom line as to why they resonate with people.
If there was one thing that you could reform, in the justice system or, make a change to, like what would it, have you ever thought about something like that? Like if you had the power to make a decision, like for something you believe in?
It would be accountability for judges who do not follow the law, right? There are judges who get lifetime appointments to the bench. They're not elected, especially in the federal system. They get appointed by the president. Some judges are elected in other places, but you have a lot of politics in the modern judiciary, and they shouldn't be there. And so lots of times you can walk into court, and based on who the judge is, you can reasonably determine if you're going to get a fair shake or not. You can say, oh man, I'm going to go in front of this judge. This judge is going to hammer me or hammer my client, not because of guilt or innocence, but just simply because they don't like them for political reasons or for reasons because they may stand for an ideology that you're not, that the judge is not a fan of.
Correct.
That shouldn't be. The justice system should not be politicized. We saw it. It happened disgustingly under the Biden regime. Many of the judges, especially with the January 6 cases and in other places, you can anticipate what they're going to do based on their politics. That is not, Lady Justice wears a blindfold, right? And she's blindfolded because justice is supposed to be blind. She holds out the scales, and the scales are supposed to make a determination based on the facts and the law, guilt and innocence, so on and so forth. And when the Constitution and when the relevant laws or a case are applied, justice is supposed to be meted out the right way. And when you have an impartial administrator of justice, a good judge just needs to be impartial, doesn't need to be a friend. That's all we're asking for in this world, right? But unfortunately, in lots of cases, in front of lots of judges these days, you don't get fair, you don't get balanced, you don't get it impartial, you certainly don't get it blind. So if I could change anything about that, it would be accountability for judges who, if they're historically overly politicized judges, they'd be removed from the bench. They'd be impeached a lot easier, and it would be a lot easier to take them out and to put people who are actually willing to do the job the right way in, if I can wave a magic wand and do anything.
Is that what you think the biggest flaw with the U.S. justice system is? Do you think it's accountability, for people? Or what do you think the biggest flaw, with the justice system is? Does it have to do with the speech, or does it have to do with, what we're discussing?
It's a good question. I mean, look, there are a lot of flaws with the justice system. I mean, historically in this country, if you were a member of a minority community, Black, Puerto Rican, whatever it is, and you have a criminal case, right? The chances of it working out for you are far less than maybe if you were a member of another group, right? That's historically been a problem. I don't think it's as big as a problem as it once was anymore. I think the real big problem is not institutional racism, it's institutional politicized judges. You have vertically integrated political systems in the judiciary that should not be there, right? It shouldn't be Republican, it shouldn't be Democrat, it should be straight down the middle. You analyze the facts that are in front of you, and you make the decision. So to your point, is it about accountability? If I had to say yes, ultimately it's about accountability. It's about judges doing the right thing, even when that decision is unpopular.
And how would you personally define a word like justice, which I feel like so many of these people fight for? How would you define something like that?
I mean, justice is relative, right? Justice is being able to, if you're in a civil case and somebody has harmed you, and if you've suffered some kind of financial damages, it's going to be able to be made whole again, right? If it's a criminal case and you're innocent, it's the restoration of your freedom. If it's a reputational case, it's the restoration of your reputation. It's being able to go into a courtroom and present the facts and say, hey, listen, I'm innocent or I've been aggrieved here, and the facts and the law support what I am saying. And if you look at this stuff the right way, I should be able to walk out of here with a result that's meaningful, a result that helps me. It's not necessarily about punishment. It's about fairness, it's about equity, and it's about making sure that aggrieved persons are heard the right way and they have an equitable result based on the facts and based on the application of law to fact. And that's what we don't see a lot of anymore.
Yeah, and speaking about facts and being heard the right way, what is some advice that you can give to anybody out there, that might be misunderstood or guilty before, they're innocent or whatever it is?
Right.
What is some advice you can give to somebody? Because I feel like you've dealt with, tremendous situations where, they try to take everything from you.
Right.
So what's some advice you can give to somebody out there that's going through something like this?
Especially, my practice is primarily devoted to men, so I'll speak to men about this. The system is designed to disenfranchise you if you've been falsely accused. If a woman falsely accuses you of misconduct, it's designed for you to take a plea or to cut a deal, to give somebody a financial incentive to make it go all the way, right? That's not justice, right? That's you being extorted simply because you're a man with money, right? There are other situations where your reputation is on the line, and a single allegation, a single tweet, a video taken out of context can destroy everything that you've worked for in a second, right?
Normal conversation can cause that nowadays.
Everything, right? So it's designed to take your money, it's designed to take your soul, and if you're a man, it's designed to take your children away from you as well. I mean, my advice to men is not to fold up. My advice to men is not to take the first deal that comes your way or the settlement offer. If you're truly right, if you want your kids, you should fight for them. If you want your reputation, you should fight for it. If you don't want to be extorted and have your house and have your wealth taken away from you, you have to fight. Now, what does that mean? Your ability to fight in this world, Andrew says this all the time, tracks to how much money that you have in the bank, right? So you have to make money. You have to be somebody who's unafraid. You have to be somebody who's savvy in the business world, and you have to be somebody who's willing to fight, and you have to be willing to invest in your defense for yourself, your family, for your home, for your future, for your kids, and not just to fold up, and not just to say this is going to be expensive, or not say I'm going to lose friends over this. You're losing friends, you're losing children, you're losing your house, you're losing your home anyway. You have to fight. You have to fight, even though the system is geared against you for now. If we get enough positive rulings, we get enough change in the outcome by fighting, we can change the culture, we can change the case law, and we can change the way that men are currently viewed by different courts of law around the world. So, to quote President Trump, whether you love him or hate him, fight, fight, fight. Don't give in, don't surrender, fight until the end, no matter what, because that is what you have to do. Otherwise, you get disenfranchised and you lose everything.
And to kind of touch on what you just said, you seem like you have such a good head on your shoulders. How do you stay so grounded and positive, dealing with a system that to some people feels so broken, dealing with all this stuff? How do you stay so positive and, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I believe in, and nobody's changing that regardless of what the world brings me?
Don't run from suffering. Life is suffering. if you're trying to live an easy life, it's not going to work out for you. And if you do live an easy life, and if you have no enemies, well, then you're probably not doing anything that's really meaningful in this world. But if you're willing to take up your cross, if you're willing to embrace suffering in this life, then through that suffering, there's no limitation on what you cannot accomplish. Suffering is a conduit for greatness. Men run from it in this world because they've been conditioned to live an easy life. But that's not in our DNA. Our DNA is to go to war when the situation calls to go to war. It's to build a house with your bare hands or with your finances when the situation calls to do for that. If you want to be great in this life, you have to be willing to take your licks, you have to be willing to put in the work, and you have to be willing to suffer. So because I understand the value of redemptive suffering, because I understand that no good thing in this world comes without a little bit of suffering, I don't run from it. I embrace it to the extent that I can. I have a good wife, I have a good family, all those things matter too. So when you have the recipe, when you have God, when you have your family, and when you have principles, nothing can shake you, right? But, you know, in this world that we live in, that's what they try to take you away from. That's what the woke culture is about. It's about diminishing all that stuff and to disempower you. But the real way, through accomplishment and through knocking down your goals, is being willing to suffer for them. It's like when you're training for a fight. Right? They always say to a champion, how bad do you want it? Right? What are you willing to suffer? How far are you willing to go? How deep are you willing to dig in order to accomplish your goal? And what is the difference between being the champion of the world and being somebody who the world never knows about? It is simple. It is one more try. A champion gets up one more time until he wins, and the loser doesn't.
One more round.
One more round. That's it, Dean. So don't be afraid to suffer. Never quit, and you're going to be okay.
And this, you know, it sounds like, you know, you being so passionate about this stuff. I mean, it sounds like legacy seems like something that would be important to somebody like you. I know for me, the reason I wake up every day and come to work and do all of the things that I do in my life to grow personally and to grow in business and to help people around me grow, you know, it's about trying to leave an important legacy behind, you know, for my family and my daughter and, you know, for everybody around me. You know, what's important to you when it comes to legacy? You know, you have to be doing this for a reason. So,
Of course. Look, my name is Joseph Daniel McBride IV. My son is Joseph Daniel McBride V.
Fourth, the
Yeah,
fifth.
yeah. My son's the fifth. Joseph Daniel McBride I was born on Christmas back in 1897. His grandfather, Daniel McBride, my middle name, he came to this country from Ireland. First thing he did was join the United States Army as a regular, served in the Civil War. I have a family that's been dedicated to military service. My wife, Cassandra, served with the Marine Corps, went to Afghanistan. Right? It's about service. It's about legacy. It's about looking back at the last 150 years of my family history and going, every one of these guys and every one of these mothers and every one of these people suffered. And they traveled across distant lands, and they joined the military, and they did this, and they did that, worked through the Industrial Revolution to survive the Great Depression, to get me to where I am today. My dad worked for Con Edison for 30 years to get me to where I am today. I'm the first person in my family to ever go to college, right? Never mind become a lawyer or do any of the stuff that I'm doing. So I look back on their sacrifice, and I honor all of that. And I say, if I don't do what I'm supposed to do, if I don't honor my family legacy, my family name, the DNA that runs in the blood that runs through my veins, then I'm betraying hundreds of years of history, hundreds of years of people trying to build me to the point where I am now. And then I look at my children, my 4 children, my 2 sons and my 2 daughters, and I'm doing everything that I can do under the sun to make sure that my ceiling is their floor, that I leave them with enough equity, with enough money, with enough education, with enough purpose, and with their faith in Jesus Christ to be able to take what I've done into the future for their sons, for their daughters, and then somebody can look back, maybe Joseph D. McBride X, will look back on me one day and say, hey, that's the guy right there that took our family from blue collar to white collar. That's the guy, I know what he did, I know what the guy before him did, I know what the guy after him did, and I'm going to honor that as well. And I think you do enough of that, you continue to make America the greatest country the world's ever known.
That's inspirational, man. I feel like so many people, you know, nowadays, especially, you know, in our world, you know, they knock the people that work hard, you know, the people that think about an idea or a goal they want to accomplish that might not seem realistic to them, you know, to sort of be friends with and to be around people that are so passionate about life and success and family and faith and all of those wonderful things. It's amazing. So I think that's a great way to wrap up today's episode. I would love everybody to tune into Joe's law firm. Your website's, I think, McBride Law.
McBrideLawNYC.com. My website's currently in the construction phase because we're doing some different things. Follow me across social media, McBride Law NYC, Instagram, Twitter. That's where I'm active. If you want to figure out what's going on, what the controversies are, what the breaking news is, and the cases that we're litigating, that's where you go to find me. And, and I look forward to doing this again, Dean.
I look forward for what's to come. I appreciate you, my friend.
God bless.